And good evening. Welcome back to the Steve Mazzacane podcast. This is one of two unique podcasts. Typically, we have a podcast that have guests that are more, the topic is more timeless. This is one of two with the candidates for First Selectman in Brantford in 2025. So we recorded earlier today Jeff Follett. We're about to introduce you to Josh Brooks. These are both being released at the exact same time. So if you're watching one, you're free to go back and watch the other. I suggest you do that before you vote. It is election season. Early voting has already started, but if you've already voted, great. If not, take a look at both of these, and we will, hopefully you can have an informed vote going into Election Day. So Josh, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Steve.
Nice to meet you. I'm glad to have you here. Thank you, like all candidates, for running for office. It takes a lot to put your name on the ballot, although you had done that in the past. Just as way of getting started, this is just a conversation. There's nothing deep. We want to know why you're running, what issues you want to run for. I'll come back with some things. You can ask questions back and forth. We can discuss some of those items. I've written a lot about some of your proposals. I know you do discuss those as well. So this is just a conversation, and that's what we're aiming for, okay? So let the voters get a chance to get to know you. I have one question, Josh. You first ran for the RTM in what year?
I believe it was 2007.
Okay. But you didn't, so your website says 18 years on the RTM.
I've been 18 years, but I did take a 4-year break.
Okay, so 18 years since you first ran for the RTM.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Did you ever hold any other... before that, were you on commissions or?
I've been on the Stony Creek Association board numerous times for numerous years. I was part of the PTA for many times.
Okay, then let's go. Let's start there then. Tell me about you, your background, growing up, went to school, that sort of thing to start.
I was born in Stony Creek. In 71, I lived there for 4 years of my life. I was then raised by this gets very complicated, so don't try to do the math. But I was raised by my mom's first cousin. I was born a Carter. My grandfather was Dwight Carter, the old Volsunga captain. We were 9 generations in Stony Creek, but also on the islands. So my mom's first cousin raised me, hence the name Brooks. I was raised in upstate New York, but we would spend the summers down here. My grandfather, running the Volsunga, had a place in Stony Creek and then eventually a place on one of the islands. So, if you have an island to go to in the summer,
you go to the island,
especially if you're coming from upstate New York. And then when I graduated high school, I moved here full time. I would live on the islands for a couple of years and then travel around a little bit. I went to college at Keene State for a year. I went to California. I went to Texas. Then when I was 21, I was here. I got an apartment. I stayed here. I met a woman. We got married eventually. We had a family from very early on. And we moved into our house that we live in now in right around 94. I think it was 94, and we've lived there ever since.
How many kids?
I have 2 children. Okay. One is 35 and one is 21.
And I think the 21-year-old is on the ballot with you, right?
That's correct. She was at the Democratic convention. And at the time, I was the placeholder because we hadn't found a candidate as of yet. And she turned to me and she said, "Why are you running for both?" I said, "I'm not. I'm just for the convention purposes, I'm the placeholder name, but we'll find a candidate." And she said she wanted to run. And she's, she went to high school at Sacred Heart Academy, and she's very civic-minded. So I think she saw it as a unique opportunity for herself to get involved, and I thought it was great. That's a proud moment as a father, right? So she wants to get involved, and I support her 100%.
Oh, good for her.
Yeah, she's 21, but she's intelligent and will speak her mind, similar to me. when appropriate.
So a younger 21-year-old Josh Brooks.
Well,
We might be in trouble.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, so talk to me about your decision the first time to run for the RTM.
So I was the youth outreach worker for the town of Brantford for 7 years. So from 98 to 2005, I was the youth outreach worker. And, in that process, I was tasked with helping youth in town that were at risk or just generally just needed somebody to, whatever it was. I mean, it was a very unique position.
That was created under Unc.
Created under Unc DeRoss, yep.
Who was kind of your mentor.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I worked with him
Yeah.
since I was 18, and off and on throughout my life. And so he and I had conversation when he first ran. And then I think Fran Walsh kind of came up with the concept, and I applied. And because I have an interesting background as far as the youth, being taken from one family, put in another at 4, and a lot of things in my life as a child, and as a young adult, I had a unique perspective on kids that may not fit in, kids that might have some troubles. So I applied for the job. I was hired, I believe, unanimously by all 4 people that were in the interview process, Unc not being one of them. So I did that for years. I thought it was a very successful program. There wasn't a lot like it. And I think we touched a lot of lives. Some I think we helped tremendously. Some still got lost. Some of the guys that work for me, I knew back then and helped them in ways. So when I left, and I left because I needed more money. I couldn't survive off the pay, and it broke my heart. But it is what it is, right? We all have to make choices
You have a family,
in life,
yeah,
right?
take care of you.
So when I left, I still wanted to be involved, and I still wanted to have a hand in the decision making to help, especially the kids, but also those that needed help, or that needed a defender, if you will. And so that's why I originally ran. I learned a lot over the past umpteen years, and so I've really enjoyed my time there. I feel like I've made some contributions on the RTM that I'm proud of, but at the same time, I feel like I've worked collaboratively with really everybody I've served with, and made some great relationships on both sides of the aisle. So I'm pleased with that, and I'm glad I went down that road.
So the decision to suddenly run for, well, not suddenly, I shouldn't say that, but your decision to run for first selectman, what led to that?
I have always thought that felt like the right path for me. I want to say at some point in the past 12 years, somebody came to me and asked me to run for first selectman prior, but my business was, I don't want to say big. I never got huge, but it was going really well, and it still is. I mean, I'm still very busy and whatever, but I had a lot of guys, and I was young, and I didn't feel like I was ready to walk away from that. So if I win, now I have to walk away from that. Like, I can't do both. And so I just said, I'm not ready. That was my feeling, was that I just wasn't ready to give up that business that I had. So I declined. And then when Jamie decided not to run, I called the powers that be and said, I'd love to run. I'm ready. And, they did their due diligence, as they should. But I got the unanimous nomination, and so here I am.
Why did you? I mean, you just felt. I mean, I understand Jamie is a kind of a force of nature politically, so you probably just you couldn't win against him, or you were just waiting for him not to.
No, I don't. I just hadn't thought about it again.
Okay,
at that
kind of
point.
opened the door.
I
when he
hadn't.
left.
I hadn't thought about that. So when I heard that he wasn't going to run again, then it came to my forefront.
Okay.
My mind. I had discussions with my wife. One of my best friends who also works for me. He and I were working building the columns down in Pine Orchard and a wall, and we talked about it, and he said give it a shot, and so I did, and that's why I'm sitting on your couch right now.
Okay, so I get that circumstance led to it. That's fine. Were there particular issues that drove you to say I want to be first selectman?
I would like to see. I can't specifically say, nor will I specifically say that there were issues with Jamie's administration that I was not.
And that wasn't the implication
Okay, well,
by any means. But
I mean, I would love to see, in my administration, I hope to be a man that is out there with the people, working hand in hand with them. It's funny. I had a conversation yesterday with somebody, and Jamie was there, and he was dressed like I am now, and I was not dressed like this because we were working on the town hall steps, and they said, "Oh, you're gonna have to dress differently," and I thought, well, but I still want to be able to get my hands dirty and get involved with various things in town, and help people with whatever it is. The idea that and when it snows, I can't go and plow. There's a couple of people that I plow for that I don't charge them for, but they're older and they just can't remove snow anymore. So the idea that I can't do that anymore makes it a little tougher, but I hope to be somebody that is still, in the trenches at times with people, helping people.
I'll give you. I mean, Jamie would wear a suit, but on more than a few occasions, because I was there, he was shoveling cars out in front of town hall. So you could still.
I want to be that person. But I'm pleased with my decision. I want to be somebody that is transparent, open, having conversations in the community. I want to work with both sides to come to compromises that work. If you compromise with both sides, whatever program that is or policy that is tends to last longer and have more success when all perspectives are heard and a compromise is brought to the table for that.
And I'll be the first to say, at no point, I've covered you now for 15 years or so, I've never seen you be overly political one way or the other. I've never seen, you're known on both sides. I think most people like you. You've gotten along with most people, and I could certainly vouch for that. There's no question on that, bring likability to the table and working with both sides, because I've witnessed that firsthand. All right, so let's talk about what do you, from a policy standpoint. So Brantford I think everybody would agree Brantford's a very well-run town. Jamie's done a good job. Unc did a good job before that. For the most part, we have a lot of continuity on a lot of our boards. What would be the Josh Brooks impact on Brantford then?
Well, first, I was part of the RTM in 2009 when we got our first AAA bond rating, when we started that. And that's something I would want to continue. I would definitely work closely with the Board of Finance and the RTM to make sure that what money we're spending and what money we're raising, we're doing in a fiscally responsible way. That won't change for me. I'm not somebody that wants to spend a lot of money. If you saw the truck I drive, you'd understand that. but at the same time, we have some issues we're facing, and we're facing it with the schools, right? And that's been well publicized. We just passed $150,000 for a feasibility study on 2 of the schools, and that's going to cost a lot of money, which is something that I wholeheartedly have supported along the way and will continue to support. And then I think down the road, we're going to have to look at the high school, seriously look at it, and come up with a plan that works not just for the next 10 years, but the next 50 years, and build all of those buildings that need to be sustainable, and keep an eye on to the future. As we're building moving forward, I definitely want to see us get to as green as possible. I said in the Ways and Means Committee meeting that I'm going to get to a net zero, and people didn't, but I think it's possible to get as close. I think we should work as hard as we can to get as close to that as we can. So we are looking at, sustainability far into the future. And so that's one of the marks, but I think that's going to hold true for both administrations.
Well, we certainly, the last, Jamie kind of set the standard. He was just appointed to the Green Bank. We've from solar farms to all the energy stuff, and we have legislation at the state because of Branford to do something. So, yeah, I think both parties would continue along. I could be wrong, but I think both would do that.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're asking what I foresee, and that I foresee as a thing. I'd like to see us, and I'd like to see us protect. I go and knock on doors, and I've been doing it now for 3 months, and there are really three issues that come up.
Okay.
And one of them has been seniors and neighbors of seniors talking about their concern for their future in this community, and their concern, and that's where the senior tax freeze was born out of. And I did some research on some of the other towns, and I think we can make a program that works well for Branford, and I think we can do that collaboratively, not just me, but with the Board of Finance, the finance director, whomever that is, the RTM, the public, and come up with a plan that works best for the community. So we're protecting the people that have come before us and built this town to where we all love it. We talk about how great Branford is, and it is. I love living in Branford. I always say, and not even jokingly, that the house I live in is the house I will die in, and I will always live here, no matter what. If I get elected or don't get elected, I will always live here. And we talk about that because we're proud of what we've become. Well, we became that on the backs of seniors who are seniors now, but have given so much to this community over the years. And so I think it's important that we assist them and protect them and keep them where they are. Yeah, there's going to have to be a balance. I understand that. And we're going to have to be creative, and we're going to have to really take a long, hard look at it. And it may take some time, but 100% I think it's possible.
All right, so you knew this was going to be part of the conversation. I
Obviously,
understand that. The question on seniors is that we have a system in place now where if somebody makes up to $75,000 as a couple, they can divert not just the tax freeze, but up to 75% of their taxes.
Well, it's a deferment.
Yeah.
It's deferment with some interest, yes.
And now, the interest is only based on if they're making money or not.
I understand that.
Now, with these houses, so this became a larger issue because suddenly we had property values jump up. Typically, that's a good thing. We want our investments to do well. But you're right. For an 80-year-old, they're not going anywhere. They need to find a way. But when you just had a $300,000 house suddenly become worth $500,000, a deferment can keep you in there for another 200 years. Like it would last forever. It's not a problem with equity to make that work. So that exists now.
Yeah,
Like we
that
have
was
something
passed
like
in 2003, and it was passed by both parties. Under the Young administration, we created that deferment program in 2003.
well, the state put in legislation that allowed it to happen, and then the towns picked it up. There's also another program where the state gives some rebates, and there's a couple hundred people that use
Right.
that. There's
Yep.
like 20 people that use the other program.
Yeah.
So these programs already exist. When you start giving a tax freeze to some, that money has to be made up somewhere else. So we have a program now that exists that they can use if they're making up to 75. Now I could make an argument, and you may make the same argument, that we should lobby the state to raise that if you want to go up to 85 or 95 or what have you. But does it make sense to raise everybody else's taxes for a small group when they have options now?
Well, I don't. I understand what you're saying, and I understand your concern, and I'm not naive to not recognize that as a concern. That's a concern I have. I mean, I've had that conversation where we need a program that fits not just the seniors but everyone. And so I think we need to do our homework, and we need to really research how that would look for Brantford, and if what the cost would be, and let the public know that if we use program A, this would be the cost to the public. If we do program B, would be the cost to the public, and have that conversation and understand where the public stands on that, and go from there. I think it's possible to do. I think it's possible to do in many different creative ways, and I think we should have that conversation. I don't think we should just blow it off as, well, it's not fair to the other folk that aren't seniors yet. I think it's a conversation we need to have.
Well, that's not the argument that I think is being made. I've
that's
covered
the
Guilford.
argument I heard. That's the argument I've heard, is that it's not fair to give somebody a tax freeze and make the other ones pay for it. And I understand that argument.
Other seniors as well.
Well, other seniors as well. I understand that argument, and I think absolutely that's a concern we should have, and we should look at that, and we should do the homework and see. And I think the deferment program is a good program. I'm not questioning that that's not a good program, but that's a start. And it's for some people it's similar to a reverse mortgage, but then other people can't qualify because you can't have a mortgage, or you can't have a home equity
The
loan.
mortgage has to give up the position. That's true, yes.
Yes, and that's not easy. I don't think my mortgage company would allow me to take a deferment and have a lien put on my house.
They do on a regular basis. No, that happens on a regular basis.
Okay.
And if you talk, listen, it's a fundamental question. You propose a tax freeze for seniors. When you put press releases out there, you put tax things in. I'm saying it, and if I'm a senior, I'm saying we're going to freeze your taxes. One, you haven't put any details on how that would happen, so we don't know how many. I know Guilford has it, and they allot a few $1 million a year towards that. They hate it in general. It's a huge pain to manage.
I haven't heard that from the Guilford folk.
I cover Guilford, so I have. But
I haven't heard that.
That's beside the point. A deferment program, especially now when you're seeing these massive increases in values, they're never going to see the impact of that. Like, if someone 80 years old is never going to get to the point that they're going to run out of their equity. So the question is you've already proposed this. And your answer now is we're going to discuss it after I'm in office, but you've proposed this. So seniors have been told they're going to get a tax freeze. What's the details of that?
I think we need to do the work, and we need to see who it will benefit. I like the program that Guilford offers. I think it's not perfect for Brantford. So, if Guilford is I don't want to call it the model, but if Guilford's plan is something you look at as an option, you could model it close to that, and it matters. Income matters, obviously. Guilford, I think Guilford's a little high on its income for Brantford, so to speak. but as I understand it, it costs Guilford $1 million a year to do it. As I understand it, on the deferment program, we only have 28 seniors that take advantage of that.
That's
and
true.
So, is it really helping a lot of seniors? I don't see it.
Or are they just not knowing about it?
Well, so that's, if nothing else, the conversation I brought up has maybe brought to light what options are for
But that's
seniors.
the argument I'd make, Josh, is if they were having a serious problem paying those taxes and they went to the tax office and said, I'm having a hard time, they are trained to look at programs that we have in town and that the state has to already help them. If you go and knocking on doors and asking people what their problems are, everybody's going to say their taxes are high. Since the beginning of time, people are going to say their taxes are high.
I don't think that's the conversation that I'm having. I hear people saying I can't stay here anymore. I mean, I had one couple email me that they had to sell their house and downsize because they couldn't stay there. I've had another gentleman tell me he can't.
And freezing their taxes would have made a difference?
Yeah, I mean, I get it was because of the, it was because of the reval. They couldn't afford it and continue to stay there. So I hear people. This is a conversation that I'm having. I'm not, this isn't something I just made up on my.
It may be, Josh,
when I was walking down the street.
It's hard to imagine a house, an average price. About 42% was our break even, where your taxes stayed the same. So if your house went up by about 42%, the taxes stayed the same. To be a point where you're growing a significant amount, you'd have to have a 65% increase of a house. There's some things that don't add up here.
I don't want to debate the issue because, I mean, my taxes went up by, I think 25%. My increase in value was higher, but 42%. If your value went up 42%, your taxes still went up because the mill rate
went
dropped
from 29 to 20 or 30 to 21.
Yeah, so it dropped 30%.
Okay, so reverse, that's almost a 50% increase.
Well,
okay.
So I don't.
I get, but what I'm hearing though is we've promised a tax freeze to seniors, but we don't know the details of that. We don't know who it would impact.
I mean, I'm not a person that's gonna make a promise and say, well, we're gonna do this for 50% of the seniors. I can't. I won't do that. I will not. I've read some things where it's been said that I'm trying to buy votes. That's not the case. I legitimately want to protect these seniors. I legitimately want to protect the people that need it and the people that have given so much to this community in the past. And I think they deserve that protection. And I think it's our responsibility to give them that protection. So
despite that
neighbors being neighbors kind of thing.
Okay. Let's talk about the Board of Finance. So this is the votes that you took a few months ago on the budget. There was one that required or called for $500,000 to be taken from contingency. You abstained from that.
Correct.
That was part of a discussion that has taken place over the last really 3-4 years because the Democratic leaders have been pushing to save less money, use it towards taxes. And I understand the claim that it's overtaxation. I get that. Why did you abstain?
I think both sides are right on this issue. I think the Democrats are right that at some point we have to stop. At some point we have to cut the fat, and that's probably not the right way to say it, but at some point, in 2024 we had $15 million in excess funds.
That's not 2024. You're saying 2024?
The audit that just came.
Okay.
The audit that just came out at the last Board of Finance meeting, which I believe was 2024. End of fiscal year 2024, we had an extra $15 million. That's more than 10%. And so where the Democrats are saying is let's not overestimate our income. We'll underestimate our income and overestimate our expenditures. We need to make those closer. We need to make that number closer. And so that I think was their direction. I just don't know if that's the only way they could make the statement, was to take it out of contingency.
Well, the other way they can make the statement is make actual cuts, but nobody wanted to do that.
Well, without the full information of where, well, two things. One, 9 point whatever million of the excess money came from underestimating the revenue. Now, the report isn't specific of why there is that or the difference between the two, and the Board of Finance didn't make that information available to me. So one way to do that is to say, all right, we have a contingency. It's at the time it was 49 million, and now it's 62 million perhaps. And so if you need more contingency, you can take it out of that. And on the flip side, if contingency is usually held at $1 million the way we do it, so if a department finds itself short and a shortfall on a particular item, overtime for the police, for example, that we can pull it out of contingency to back cover that, which is a standard practice. And I've been doing that for a long time, and so I understand that. And I think the Democrats saw that as, all right, you have an excess on the expenditure side, so we can perhaps find that from the expenditures and not from the contingency. I think there was movement to cut it more, but to specifically cut it out of the budget without understanding where the excess is also not as cut and dry. It's not as black and white. It's just cutting the budgets. You're not, if you're not shown specifically where the excess is in the budget. It was it was just under $6 million on the expenditure side. If you don't know exactly where that money is,
there was an excess of $6 million on the expenditure side.
That's how the audit said
that
it,
we allotted to spend and didn't spend.
That's correct.
Isn't that a good thing?
I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I didn't say it was a bad thing. But you asked me, why wouldn't you just cut it out of the operating budget?
Well, my real question to you is, Josh,
I'm saying, unless you know where that excess is, cutting it. I can't cut. I'm just going to use a ridiculous analogy. I can't cut the crayons out of kindergarten if because I think they have too much in the crayons. It would be helpful to know where they have too much, and then I could cut it. So I think that was part of why they chose contingency, but at the same time, I understand why cutting contingency is not the best practice.
We saw the reaction from the Board of Finance. But the question is, you're running to be the first selectman. You've been on the RTM for 14 years. Elected 18 years ago for 14 years. I could understand abstaining because there was a conflict of interest.
That's not why I abstained.
Why would you're elected to make decisions?
I abstained without knowing exactly where the excess came from, without understanding whether the board, because the reaction from the Board of Finance came after the vote.
Yes.
Without understanding the vote from, not the vote, but the position of the Board of Finance. Part of me thought, and probably they should have, but the Board of Finance at the time could have taken the $500,000 out of the rainy day fund or the undesignated fund and put it back into contingency. The RTM cannot. And so without knowing if the Board of Finance had a willingness to do that, and that goes back to collaboration between the two bodies. I mean, there's a reason why there is an RTM. There's a reason why there's a Board of Finance, and there's a reason why there's a Board of Selectmen. And they're all sort of should be working together to try to get to a common goal. I didn't feel like the Board of Finance was doing that, and they could have. And on top of that, if they had taken the $500,000 out of the undesignated fund, it was replaced 3 months later, 4 months later.
Then why not vote?
Because again, I didn't know where the Board of Finance, whether the Board of Finance would do that. And back to your original question was, I didn't think that there's a concern when you take money out of contingency, and the contingency is a necessity in the budget. And so I did not feel comfortable, while I understood why the Democrats at the time took the $500,000. I did not feel comfortable that it come out of contingency.
Okay. So later in that same meeting, there was a resolution passed, which is asking for more money to come from undesignated fund balance.
Correct.
Which you voted for.
I voted for, correct.
Why vote for that and not the other? I'm confused as to...
Well, because again, you asked where the money was cut from. I was not comfortable that was where we cut the $500,000 from, but felt that if the Board of Finance were to replace that money later in the resolution, asking them to, then I would have been, without knowing that they were willing to do that, I could not vote yes. But at the same time, I didn't feel that I was against cutting the budget where we could, which was, in my opinion, was contingency.
So you didn't feel right making a decision?
I didn't feel that it was appropriate either way.
So it goes to the Board of Finance. The chairman is Joe Mooney. At that meeting, I have
a lot of respect for.
I have no question. A Democrat and is respected statewide, helped fix hospice, no question about that. I've never seen him that upset. I've never seen a statement read by him on how upset he was on those actions. You call them inappropriate. Would you have done that again?
Here's how I'll answer that.
Go ahead.
I think there's a reason why that Branford has an RTM. And in fact, I believe the RTM existed before the Board of Finance, and I believe the RTM existed before the Selectmen.
Mm-hmm.
The reason is the RTM is there. They are elected to represent their constituency, as best they can, and to protect the interests of those there. They are the voice of the people. Not all towns have an RTM. Some have a town meeting. And so they are there to do as they see to protect those people, but to be their voice. And that voice spoke. Now, the Board of Finance may disagree with that voice. I don't.
Well, this matters for a few reasons, Josh.
It matters that. So the RTM, who is that voice, made that decision. Now, you can disagree with that voice, but that is the voice that was elected by the people to have that voice, and so that their voice should be respected.
So you are telling me how important the RTM is, but then you're telling me that you can abstain from votes.
Yeah, that's one is not the same. You're asking.
You were elected to abstain from votes?
I'm answering the question about that you brought up about Joe Mooney not happy.
Yeah, so Joe Mooney's not happy. The Board of Finance isn't. By the way, all 6 members of the Board of Finance, Democrat, Republicans, all concurred on that statement. That statement is public. I published it. It's there. Your response was, well, the RTM has a role. I completely agree. We have different branches of government. But you're not taking a vote when it gets to you to take the controversial vote.
I mean, I took a vote asking the Board of Finance to reinstate that $500,000. That was my vote.
Okay. Let's keep going then. So we have we're not going to go back to the Board of Finance because we have that. But in working with the Board of Finance, their clear long-term plan has been to save. It's been to put money aside to fully fund all of our pensions, our obligations, into set. We have we have additional funds, coastal resiliency, and yes, we have more money saved in Brantford than probably most towns do. Certainly, I think a higher percentage of the budget than most towns do. Now we're a shoreline town. You know full well the cost of doing a seawall if that happens or what have you. A lot of this has to do with Trump being in office. Like we've said, we don't know what we're getting from Trump. We don't know if FEMA money is there when it comes again. If Irene and Sandy come back to back, we have no idea if that's coming. What is your mentality? Would you stick with the resolution you passed or with the Board of Finance who is trying to save more money?
Well, I think this is a two-part question.
Good.
First, when elected, I will work with the Board of Finance and with the finance director to get closer to zero excess funds, because I think 60 million or 62 million, it's actually probably closer to 65 million if you include the 3 million we designated for the schools, but even if we carry that over for next year, fine, it's still $62 million. I think that amount of money in an undesignated fund is more than enough. So I think moving forward, and by the way, if it was 15 million last year or close to that, then this year we'll most likely have more money in excess come next year. So I think in the next budget process, regardless of who the next administration is, we ought to try to get closer to zero, and that would help with any tax increase 100%. If you take 2024 and you get to a zero when you already at that point had an undesignated fund of $50 million, it was 53, but we designated 3 million. If you sharpen your pencils, as we say in my business, and get closer to a zero, that would have helped tremendously with the reval and those homeowners that really saw an increase. So I think that is first and foremost.
But that's not.
It's a two-part question. Thank you.
You're right.
So that's first and foremost, and in zero, when you do that, you run the risk of having a deficit, right? I remember in 2009, right, when we first got AAA bond rated, I think we had an excess that year of $4.5, maybe $5 million. The next year we had a deficit of $3 million, and then the following year we had a excess of 3 and change. And so when you get to the zero, having the undesignated fund there, if you try to get closer to a zero on the income and on the expenditure, you run the risk of having a deficit. So having the undesignated fund allows you the room to be close to that and have a deficit and use the undesignated fund to offset that deficit. So that's part one. Part two, it's interesting you talk about the coastal resiliency and the possibility of a hurricane, and I get that. I mean, I was there. I worked from Irene. Sandy, there wasn't as much damage, but from Irene, I worked every day from the day after Irene to Christmas minus 3 days. I worked every day. So I understand the damage that's possible with a hurricane, and how having money ready for that is the best, is best practice. So I don't disagree with that statement. We have created a fund in the Coastal Resiliency Fund, a sinking fund, as a way to combat that. So part of our taxes goes towards that sinking fund, and is having an undesignated fund continue to grow, or are we? So do we take some of that undesignated money and put it into that coastal resiliency fund as a stopgap? Should we need it? That's a possibility. Although I don't love that. But if you want to have a fund for emergency situations, then that's great. But at what point is too much? I mean, I think Linden Avenue, which was a big expense to the town, I think it was only $900,000. And then the other piece of it is, let's, God forbid, something awful happens to the sewer treatment plant, right? And we have to rebuild it because a superstorm comes or whatever. I think it is also appropriate to think about some of that money needs to be bonded because, the philosophy of the current Board of Finance and of the finance director is that if a community is spending money that the next generation gets to utilize, that the next generation should also pay for it. So that's why we bond things for 30 years. And so I think you're in a position, yes, I mean, we have a large undesignated fund. Spending that money is not something that's easy to do it appropriately, and I'm not suggesting that we do spend that money. We need to come up with a comprehensive plan on how we address that, but I would say that I think at some point we have enough, and we're at that point. We have more than enough. So we need to think about not having so much, and that may mean that may mean a closer to zero, and then having that undesignated fund to backfill that, because people are already taxed on that. So if the next administration adjusts that and there's a shortfall, well, the taxes you paid last year covers that shortfall. So it's not unreasonable to do that. Does that help answer that?
I think you're going to be different than the Board of Finance mentality, but you're running for office, and that's fine.
Yeah.
The only issue is the Coastal Resiliency Plan isn't for reactions to storms. The Coastal Resiliency Plan is helping us prepare to how quickly can we recover from a storm. So we do a lot of work way before any storm would happen. That's what that's actually for. So it's a little bit different.
Well, it can be used for both, I would think.
All right. The other thing you've mentioned as a campaign platform is with regards to speeding. Talk to me about speeding.
70% of the doors I knock on, that's the first thing I say. You got to do something about the traffic.
70% of the doors?
70%.
About the traffic or speeding?
Speeding and traffic. Now, talking about speeding, soothing the speeding, traffic, people not driving properly, not stopping at stop signs, not stopping at crosswalks. All of these things are, on the forefront. I did knock on a lot of condo doors, and I will agree that they were not saying that, because in their little community, they don't have speeding; they have speed bumps.
I don't question.
I
actually believe you're a very sincere person.
Right.
I believe what you're saying.
I think it's something we have to look at. I've lived on Thimble Island Road for too long, and I've raised 2 children there, and I can sit on my porch with my kids playing out. I mean, not now, obviously, playing outside, and I hear the cars coming, and they'll go by my house doing 50. You can go to any Stony Creek Association meeting, and they're going to talk about speeding. You can, I would imagine it's true with the Short Beach Association. I know it's true in Indian Neck down there. So if all of these people are saying that, I am elected to represent them. I cannot ignore that. You have to address it. If that is their biggest concern, and maybe it's not their biggest concern, but it's on their lips, you have to address it. It's not optional.
And you address it how?
I think there's many different ways to combat it. I mean, everybody now, they've started this tabletop program where they're building. They're not speed bumps, but they're
humps.
They soothe the traffic. So where it's appropriate, you can do something like that.
Police have typically been very against it here in Brantford, but maybe
I haven't specifically had a conversation with the chief yet because it's not appropriate. The chief and I will have that conversation. But I think enforcement, and we all know that the Brantford Police Department is down 6 officers, not from any fault of their own or anyone else's. There are some guys in the academy. One just came out and joined the force. So when they're patrolling on any given day, they're at 5 patrolmen, and that's not enough. So we can help them get healthy, and then maybe we can go back to having somebody be a traffic officer and whose sole job is to soothe that. When there's consequences to your actions, you'll start changing your actions a little bit. And if we see some enforcement, that would help with soothe the traffic. There's a town, and I can't remember it. I read it somewhere where they have cameras, or not, speed cameras, and I think they send out warnings. And I would imagine, I'm not a computer guy, but I imagine there's an algorithm where you could have some sort of cameras, and as people get a warning, the next time they get a ticket, and an algorithm would be able to do that. So I think if we're creative, there are ways to help with that, but we have to address it, and we have to look at it creatively. We have to look at it bipartisanly. We have to look at it with the, all of the different departments that deal with that. We just created that board with the pedestrian and bicycle, so work with them as well. And I think, I don't think this is an unsolvable problem, and nor do I think anybody is responsible for the problem. I just think it's something that we need to address, and because that's what the people want, and that's what they want. They need. So I have to give it to them.
Okay, so let's ask the major questions we ask. You take office, the first 3 things that are first on your agenda are what?
Well, the first thing on my agenda will be the budget, obviously. I've made that clear in this conversation, but I want to look at the budget and how, we can get closer to zero, both on the expenditure and on the income side. But I understand that the Board of Finance may not agree with me on that thing, so we'll find a compromise, and we'll have a very public and open discussion about that. And I invite you to come be a part of that discussion.
I'll be a part of it no matter what, Josh. You know those things.
So that's, obviously that's because, the budget process begins in February. So, begins in February for other entities.
I get the point. We get it. Yeah.
Okay. 2, I don't even like talking about it publicly, but Jim Finch may be retiring.
No, he is.
He's made it pretty clear that he was. And so I think that's a very important issue. We need to find the right person to fill that role. If it's from within, great. But if it's from out, that's a big, those are some big shoes. I don't know if he really has big shoes, but those are some big shoes to fill. And so that's going to be a priority as well. And then I think making the police department whole and start addressing the traffic, that'll all come very quickly as well.
Okay. So make your claim. I go to vote. I should check a box. Why should I check you?
I want to say this in a way that is about me, so that's important, because I am the same as you are. I've worked my whole life. I've spent my whole life in this community. I believe in integrity. I believe in honesty, and I believe in transparency. I believe in protecting the people that need protecting. I believe in making sure that the little guy is whole, the blue collar guy is whole, and I want to make them whole. I believe in didn't mention this from the budget meeting, but I don't believe that I believe that we need to take care of the people that run this town. And so I want to make sure that they're being compensated properly, whether that's the teachers, the police, the fire, the public works people, the people in town hall, that we are compensating them where they want to stay and they want to do the best they can. And I'm not saying that they're not doing that now, doing their hardest work, but I want to make sure we compensate them for that. And I'm somebody that did that, as you remember from the board of, from the RTM budget meeting. I took $10,000 to, give the part-time people a raise because inflation was 3% or predicted at 3%, and if you're giving them 2.25%, they're actually losing money at the end of the year. So that's somebody I am 100% am who I am. Will always take care of them. I work very hard. Everybody says to me, well, you're gonna have to work hard. Well, I work very hard now. I will work tirelessly to represent the people that have elected me, both sides of the aisle. I will never be a partisan individual. Sounds ridiculous. I have many relationships, both as friends, as family, and as colleagues who are on the other side of the aisle and have fundamental differences than I am. But I am charged to represent everyone equally, and I will do so. So I will 100% work bipartisanly with both Republicans and Democrats. I will work openly with the Board of Finance and the RTM because both have equal importance. I will support the schools and what they need. And again, I am a fiscally responsible human being. I've always believed in it, and I will continue to believe in that.
Okay. Well, good luck on Election Day. Thanks for coming in.
This has been a lot of fun. I'm not going to lie to you. I enjoyed this.
Well, I get in the weeds in some of these conversations, and I think that's important to do so. I think there is a little bit of a difference of opinion in how our current Board of Finance runs and how you would like to run things, and that's good for people to know, and maybe there is more balance that's needed, so that's something that the voters can decide on. But I'm glad we can get into. A lot of times you can't get into the weeds with everybody, and so I appreciate that we can.
Well, if you're not willing to get in the weeds, and if you're not willing to answer tough questions and have people come at you, then you're in the wrong line of work. If I wasn't willing to do that, I'd be at town hall right now with a jackhammer, breaking up the concrete to set the steps. But I'm not. I'm here. So I appreciate that you asked those questions. You did it in a polite way. You could have yelled at me. I would have been okay with that. But
I don't yell, Josh, but I do. If I see something that looks to me like something, an elected official of 14 years on the RTM abstaining from a key vote is a red flag for me.
Well, I understand you having that feeling, but I believe that for me was the right vote at that time, because voting no against it wasn't the right vote, and voting yes for it wasn't the right vote. So that's why I abstained.
Okay, I understood. On that note, thank you for coming in. I appreciate it. Good luck the rest of the way, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks for having me.
All right, have a good one. Guys, both of these videos for both Josh Brooks and for Jeff Villette are available now. We're releasing them at the same time, so if you're watching this, both are available. They should be early voting already started, so if that's available over the weekend as well, and then obviously Election Day is 2 Tuesdays from now. Have a great one. We'll talk to you soon.